Artificial intelligence in the SOC has a lot of promise, but also a little bit of fluff. I think we've all been through a number of hype cycles in our day, whether it's around blockchain or around ML. Certainly in the old days, you might have put AI into that category. But now we've all had these ChatGPT experiences where you can input arbitrary data and have fun with it, be able to play with it, manipulate it, have it create a poem for you if you want. But we've also had the ChatGPT experience where sometimes you ask it a question and it gives you a response that's wrong, often hilariously so. And that might be fun for making a poem for someone's birthday party, but it's less fun inside the SOC where you ask it a question and it gives you a bad snort rule, or it gives you a YAR rule that's super expensive, or it doesn't understand a regular expression. So where we've leveraged artificial intelligence in our platform is summarizing trusted content, whether that trusted content is something like an action you've taken inside the platform, whether that trusted content is an alert, whether or not the alert is a false positive or not, the data coming from the tool, you can trust that it has fidelity. So we've leveraged artificial intelligence in ways that we think are reasonable and responsible and are going to give trusted output. We leverage LLMs and AI in a few different places inside the StrikeReady platform, but the two most common places are around alert triage, helping you triage things more efficiently, less copying and pasting. And we also leverage LLMs in our case summarizer, right? At the end of an incident or alert, nobody wants to make up a document based on the timelines and you're recreating all your notes about when you discovered this or when you triage that. So Case Summarizer does a great job at that. So first I'm going to show you how we do automated alert analysis, leveraging our LLMs, leveraging our CARA assistant. So I'm going to come into a sample alert. And in this case, it's going to be from CrowdStrike, and CrowdStrike does a great job in terms of fidelity. And looking at the title of this alert, is a process with an obfuscated command line, is executing. So that's kind of an interesting thing. It's clearly detecting this suspicious content based on obfuscation. And an analyst is going to look at this and say, okay, maybe that looks like base 64. Maybe that looks like some sort of algorithm that I recognize. Maybe they're going to take it and throw it into a single byte XOR, brute forcer, or maybe something like a cyber chef. But LLMs do a great job of taking arbitrarily obfuscated content and helping you decode it. So I'm going to take this data, and we could do it all from this window, but I haven't shown off our conversational agent yet of CARA. So I'm going to say, help me, and I'm going to paste in the content, and CARA is going to understand what I mean. I could say, decode this or extract this content or help or look at this for me. So what CARA is doing is I just pasted in that data, and we could do that from another window, but it pasted in that data and it's going to start to tell you exactly what this is doing. So it's saying this is a PowerShell script with obfuscated command. It's going to talk about what it's doing. So it's a base 64 encoded string. And at a high level, it's saying it constructs a URL, fetches content, and executes the content. And that's great, but maybe I want that data more specifically. So I might say, hey, can you re-decode this for me? Or can you pull out the chunk? Or in this case, I'll just say decode. And I'm just going to re-put that content in there. And you can see that it's taking that and it's decoding it more specifically. So if I want to understand at a lower level what how I want to do it, you can ask questions like that to CARA. So here you can see that it's nicely decoded, and it doesn't really matter what the decoding algorithm is. But you can see that it's pulling out the next stage payloads, pulling out, hey, where's this thing going to talk to? So let's say I want to say, okay, block this, right? Take that indicator and push out a blocking rule across my stack. You can do that in just a couple of seconds, all without leaving the interface. So maybe I want to push out a blocking rule in my Fortinet, my Gmail, and my Defender. You can do that all from inside the platform. So next I'm going to show you how to analyze another alert with CARA, but this time do a bit more on the investigation side and on the mitigation side, and then summarize all that work you did at the end. So I'm going to come into another CrowdStrike alert, and I'm going to, again, leverage CARA to help me understand what it means. And then I'm going to go one step further and help it translate the code into a language that I'm more familiar with. So here you can see, another obfuscated command line. This is a little bit difficult for analysts to understand what it means. You can see it's doing different character substitutions and manipulations and adding content and deleting temp files. So again, I can just come down into CARA and say, hey, decode this for me. And it's going to take all that content and analyze it. And it's going to start to break down exactly what each step is doing. So here you can see that it's pulling out, not just the PowerShell executions, but it's also telling you some of the trickier things that this is doing inside the platform. It's leveraging character substitutions, it's adding and subtracting content, it's decoding things that are embedded inside an external file. And that's all well and good, but I might want to take this and then start to analyze it in a language that I'm more familiar with. I might be good at PowerShell, or I might be good at Perl, or I might be good at Python. In this case, I'm going to say, create me a PHP script that is the equivalent of this content. And it's going to take all of that content and then make me a script. It's going to translate it into a language that I'm more familiar with because I happen to be a PHP guy, but maybe I'm interested in Fortran or Perl or whatever. So here you can see that it's creating the PHP equivalent of that script so that I can more easily understand what it's doing. So we looked at the previous alert and we were able to show that you could copy and paste the content. And in this alert, we could help create a script. We could help translate the alert into a different language. And when we come into our investigative view, that you can see that the system is automatically linking this alert with any other alert that might be related. And it's going from the identities that are affected with any other alerts coming from those identities. And it's doing that subsequent level of pivoting throughout your organization, whether it's pivoting to alerts or logs or events or identities or assets. All that is happening automatically. The system is learning exactly what your infrastructure looks like. And when it comes to doing those investigative steps, you can see that we're pulling in each level, and we're doing those pivots based on the information that's coming in. We always explain exactly what's happening inside the platform. But now let's say that you're done and you want to push out a mitigation, that you want to push out a block rule, you want to force the user to reset their password. I'm going to come to actions, and in this case, I'm just going to push out a blocking rule. I'm going to deploy an artifact to certain places on my stack. This domain really bad site that was involved inside the alert. So I'm just going to take this alert and just very simply push out a blocking rule on a couple bits of my stack, and I want to document that action. So I'm going to push it out onto Fortinet. I'm going to say next, and I'm also going to document this on an external service. So we have case management built into our platform, but lots of other people like to use ServiceNow or Jira or Freshdesk. So I'm going to push out that rule, and you can see that as I do the action, it's getting recorded inside the case. So you can see exactly who pushed out what rule, where it was documented on an external service. If I had added a note, why did I do this? And you can see that we've brought in all the identities and assets, all the different artifacts, all the different alerts that make up this case. So now I've deployed that artifact. Maybe I've done other investigative steps, looked on other bits of tech, but now I'm done with the case and I want to summarize all the work that I did. So previously you might have been using Excel spreadsheets or handwritten notes. But you can see in StrikeReady, we're always providing timelines based on the indicators, based on the users, the assets, the investigators. So now you can just come up to generate report, and we're going to create a report, and maybe it's going to be tailored for a particular executive, or maybe it's going to be tailored for different investigations. So we give different levels of detail based on the different reports, and we provide all that information, and so that when you create the report and you close the case, all the information about all the actions are nicely summarized right at the top. And it's also fully exportable so that you don't need to, copy and paste this into an email or copy it into a Word and write it to a PDF. All this is available, right inside the description of the case. You can see I just said insert description, and all that information is now going to be available inside the case so that you don't need to, do anything manual after the fact. So now we can close the case, and all the steps about what you did to triage the alerts, to investigate the alerts, to mitigate the alerts, all that information is all right inside the case, and that chain of evidence is always going to be there. StrikeReady continues to use AI the way it's useful and responsible inside the SOC. We want it to be a force multiplier, but we don't want it to give people a false sense of security. So we're always giving confidence levels about how likely it is that the data that's coming back, how confident we are that it's truly malicious or not malicious. And you've seen that throughout the CARA scoring as we go. Obviously, sometimes the automated investigations, sometimes it's very obvious that it's a true positive. Sometimes it's very obvious that it's a false positive. And frankly, there's a lot of time in the middle. So while we can do great auto investigations on email-based alerts and endpoint-based alerts, identity alerts, dark web alerts, there's always going to be an area where we do the investigation and we present the data for you to make a determination. So when it's obvious, we can help you. We can close those alerts for you, right? That, what people are always looking for, close all my alerts, close as many as you can. But in reality, there's always going to be some portion in the middle where we present the information to you, and it's a human judgment call about whether something's a true positive or a false positive.
Discover how StrikeReady can help you improve your cybersecurity. Sign up for a free demo